meets mind, we ponder, we dream.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to finally meet you because this is how we meet each other nowadays over Zoom, right?
Yep.
This is face to face. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm excited to do this. So name is Mike Tedasco. I am a visiting fellow at the AI Center at San Diego State University. My background is kind of varied in the business world. I started off as an accountant. I moved into product and then into innovation, where I
Wait a minute.
ran
Wait a
that
minute.
group.
You didn't find accountancy so exciting that you wanted to stay?
I, like all accountants, eventually evolve into innovation. That's the typical career path for accountancy.
We
Yeah,
go, oh my
no,
God, this
it wasn't the
job.
best fit. I was so bad. Like, I literally started, I mean, because I took a couple classes in college on it, but I remember I had to do like, I didn't know the difference between a debit and a credit when I was starting and like working at GE doing finance and accounting. And like, I was just really bad at it. It was
Yeah.
not the fit for me.
No, I took an
Um,
accounting course in college and I could never get anything to balance. I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm
That's
mathematically
key. Yeah,
incompetent.
yeah, I always had a plug as well. I'm just like, okay, well, there's something. I'll just retained earnings, I think. Just throw it in there,
That's
like
right.
when
Just
in
like
doubt.
add an extra line of
Yeah.
nonsense.
But yeah, I've always been somebody who's like really been interested, exciting in technology, not an engineer by trade or anything. And so I've always been a kind of person who loves to play with and kind of push things to the extreme as
Hmm.
far as like toying around with stuff. And that's a
Cool.
lot of what I do today.
Nice. Nice. So where are you now? You
I'm in
said
Silicon Valley.
you're doing, no, you're saying you're doing AI research or whatever?
Yes, yes, at San Diego State University. So I'm actually in Silicon Valley, Northern California,
Hmm.
but the university is San Diego State. So we have an AI center there. It is focused on working, a few things in the mandate for the school. One is bringing AI tools and explaining them to the school and to the community at large in San Diego. Another is to do research in certain key strategic areas. We're actually looking at doing things with diffusion models and
Mm.
seeing what we can do with actual like creating images or potentially video and things like that. Also doing some robotics work as well. But on top of all that, like where I see like a lot of excitement and interest also is in the area of PTSD and healthcare and doing some things around those areas. We've done a lot of research around that because I think there is a lot of value for mental health that AI is potentially going to be able to do.
So tell me a bit about your journey of how you got here from accounting to
Mhm.
where you are now. Because
Sure, sure.
sounds interesting. I love this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I love to tell it. Like I've always been I don't know. I've always just been interested in finding what is like the most interesting job. And
Hmm.
often most interesting job is just like working for the best manager.
Right.
Like what if people take away nothing else from this, like always in your career, just work for the best manager, no matter what that
Well,
is.
that is so true. I mean, the number one reason why people leave
Yeah.
jobs, is because of the manager, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like,
That is 100% the case. And look, here's my manager test. Here's my test to find a best manager. If you sat down with your manager and actually said to them, hey boss, I got a great offer from another place. What should I do? If your manager might actually tell you, do you know what? I love having you on this team. You're unbelievable, but you should go. That
mhm.
is a great manager.
Yeah.
Because like they are literally putting you ahead of themselves, ahead of their team, ahead of the company. Like that is the kind of
Yeah.
manager. I've only had so many of those in my life, but like those are the kind of managers that like we all should be lucky enough to find.
Yeah. So I had this when I first got the job in Silicon Valley. So I'm originally from Canada, right?
Hmm.
Toronto. And I was working for a wireless company up there. And I got the job here. And so I had to have the meeting with my manager to tell him I was leaving, right?
Yeah.
So we sit down. I tell him that I got this great offer from a company in Silicon Valley. And the first thing he said was, take me with you.
That's great. But that's what you want. I,
Yeah.
I, I mean, honestly, you want a manager to support you, not just to be like there for the company mandates. And I know
Yes.
that's like, that's not what the company wants, but that's what you want in your careers. So look, I just jumped from role to role. I started off at GE, which was like the biggest, most valuable company in the world at that time, doing finance and accounting there. I moved to a paper company, which is
Mhm.
like the least sexy industry anybody could
What, well, you
possibly.
found something less sexy than accounting?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But when I was there, I got to do a lot of stuff. I actually had an amazing manager
Mm,
among the time there. So I got to work on, can we turn trees into fuels? Can we do all
nice.
this other kind of stuff, M&A and all this other opportunity? Um, did a startup, failed miserably at it. And that's after
That's
that.
okay. Everyone has to do a startup at one point in their life, whether they fail miserably at it or not. I think everyone needs to have that startup experience, right? Do you agree?
100% because I
Mm.
learned so much from that. I mean, I was getting my site hacked and like, and again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know. Like, I'm just having to like deal with all this stuff, in the morning, I'm writing press releases. And then in the afternoon, I'm like, oh my God, all my customer information has been stolen.
Oh no,
And,
life of an entrepreneur.
yeah, like this is the life of an entrepreneur. So amazing experience from that. But after that, I went to PayPal. And as I like to say, when I was at PayPal, I was dangerously unqualified for every single job that I had at the company. And that's the kind of career you want. I spent 11 years there. The last 6 were running the innovation team. And it was just an amazing
Nice.
experience. So that's
Anything that you guys that's out there that is came out of your team?
I mean, so a lot of the stuff that I'm actually still seeing today, one of the things we incubated like the first blockchain team at PayPal.
Hmm.
And so right now I keep on seeing like my former colleagues there talk about like PYUSD, which was their own stable coin, which we invented the
Nice.
first white paper on for that. It is being used. I think it has like over $1 billion of
Oh, fantastic.
in float out
Congratulations.
there.
Of
Like
course, this
so
is
it's
after you left, right?
yeah. Well, they had to get rid of me to make it a real success. I'm the idea guy. I can't execute on any of this stuff myself. But yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, look, we've had a lot of successes, a lot of failures, but that's like the joy of innovation is
Yeah.
you go through both sides of
Well,
that.
what do you think is the biggest problem? I mean, you've done work in innovation in large organizations. I've done the same. What do you think is the biggest roadblock to
Um,
innovating in these companies?
it's the decoupling of outcomes
Mm,
with the work that's actually being done.
right.
Um, there's luck, there's macroeconomic things, there's so many things that happen that are outside of your control.
Hmm.
And generally speaking, in companies, if you are on a product that succeeds, you succeed, and they
Yeah.
assume it's because of you. And if you're on a product that fails, it's often just assumed it's because of you.
Right.
When in reality, I think as
We all
companies,
need
we
a
need
scapegoat to point at.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much luck, there's so much chance, there's so much everything else in there. And most companies aren't good at that. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're on something that there's a decent chance it might fail, and you might learn a whole lot from that,
Oh
most
yeah.
companies, look, even at PayPal, that was something that was a struggle the entire time I was
Mm,
there. And I would never say we actually got good at that. And very few companies are good at separating those two things because it's frankly, it's hard to tell. Well, was it the team that made this thing a success? Or was it all these other things outside the team's control and they actually made a whole bunch of mistakes?
yeah.
Like,
It's actually all of the above, right?
yeah,
That's the thing. Like
yeah,
right time, right place, right product, right team, right price, right everything just happened to fall in line at that exact moment to make it a success. Because if anything deviated one way or another, then it probably would have failed. But all these factors fell into line. So
absolutely.
I
And
think that.
look, the one example I can tell you of a failure that I had at PayPal was a product called PayPal Beacon.
Mm,
And if anybody wants to like go on YouTube, type in PayPal Beacon, watch the video. This was an amazing product that in 2013 we were launching that would allow for hands-free payments in stores.
ooh,
And I see the Stanford flag behind you there, Chris. Like, so we were actually on University Avenue in Palo Alto testing this in real stores with,
nice.
so it was a bunch of students, undergrads from Stanford that were shopping at these stores where they could walk in with their phone and buy something without even touching their phone.
Wow.
2013.
You were
What was the
ahead of the
reaction of the
curve.
student? What's that?
You were ahead of the curve. You were too early.
way too early because the students were like, what the hell would I ever use my phone? Why would I use my phone to buy something in a store? That
Right.
was like the general consensus we had. Like, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I have a credit card. Why would I use my phone to use something to pay?
Yeah.
The timing was totally wrong. The value prop wasn't enough to get people to change. There's
Yeah.
all these reasons, cool technology,
Yeah.
tons of patents, all this, but
Yeah.
like, you know what?
But
It wasn't the right time.
see, didn't you, don't you find that's sort of like a key problem a lot in these innovation groups because we're
Yeah.
always too far ahead. Like we're always
Yes.
thinking of these products and you come up with these products, you work on them, you get them out there, you do market testing, and then you realize they fail, right? But then you see like 5, 10, 15 years later, someone else does the exact same or very similar thing that what you
Yes.
did, and you think to yourself, damn it. We were
And
just
the one thing I'll say on that, Chris, because you're spot on, 100%. Like one of the things that and then COVID happened, unfortunately,
yeah.
but we were actually building a physical diorama model that was like representative of a graveyard of all the dead PayPal products. We were
Wow.
building this in our innovation lab, inspired by Ben and Jerry's, because they do something very similar. And
I
in
love
that
that. I should
graveyard,
do
we
that. I
wanted
should
it
do
to be
that.
a teaching tool because like often like we tried QR codes for in-store payments back in 2010 and it didn't work. Well, because it didn't work then doesn't mean it can't work today or
I
in
know. How do
different
you convince
markets
people of
or
that? That's the thing that drives me crazy. It's like people like you pitch things that have already happened, that have already been out there and they have already failed. And you're like, wait a minute, that may have failed then, but it failed now. Oh, we tried that. We tried that. So we're not going to try it again. It's like, come on.
yeah. Webvan failed in 2000 because people weren't online, there weren't groceries and all that, but that doesn't mean you can't order groceries online in 2024. I mean,
Exactly.
it is a different world, it is a different time between those two. Yeah.
But 90% of the time, I think it's because we're too early. We just misjudge. We want to do something new. We want to do something innovative, and we just go a little bit beyond the edge, and it's just too much for people. And then eventually, the rest of the world sort of catches up to you.
Yes.
And it's almost like some startups, if they just last long enough, then they'll
Yes.
do okay because they just the market sort of reaches them at the right point. Right?
And I think that's why like so many VCs when they're looking at they're testing for grit because
Yeah.
I think it's the very same thing that you're talking about. I mean, these funds might have a 7-10 year cycle, something like that, when a venture
Yeah.
capitalist is investing in a company. And part of that is just like, okay, are you going to be gritty enough to just like figure this thing out, to wait this thing out, wait for the world to kind of catch up to you with that?
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, because what you're describing is Amazon Go, right? Amazon Go, and
Okay.
there's a bunch of other companies that are in the same space where you just sort of check your phone in, walk around, pick stuff up, and walk out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Can
a
I tell a
brilliant
story about
idea.
Amazon Go? So like I was very much in the space. So when Amazon Go launched in Seattle, I said to my boss, like, hey, I gotta go to Seattle, spend a day
Yeah.
there. So I literally spent a day just trying to break Amazon Go to see how it worked. And it was so much fun to do. One of the things that I did was I called it the Indiana Jones move. Like, so if you've ever seen the first Indiana Jones movie, he's like weighing how much sand it takes to do the thing. Because literally there was so much technology in that store. They had weight sensors and everything. And so I would like take one bottle that I knew weighed 16 ounces, another one that weighed 16 ounces, kind of like do a quick turn like that, like Indiana Jones would. But like literally, but this is also how you learn about stuff.
Exactly.
I spent like 6 hours going back and forth buying like, $3 worth of stuff at a time, seeing how long it took to get a receipt. I wore like literally like different disguises and stuff. I took my jacket off in the store. I tried everything, but like
I love it.
learned a lot from it. And
Somebody
learned
somebody
just
at
from that, I
Amazon
could figure out
HQ is
how they
like,
were doing things as a
who the
company.
hell is this guy?
Yeah, no. The employees were confused beyond belief what I'm doing. Like, I mean, I wasn't stealing anything to be clear. Like, you kind of can't steal in that
Sure,
store.
you're
Um,
testing all the various
but
permutations.
I
Yeah, I
learned a
totally get
lot.
it.
Like when you're into something like that, whether you're in a startup or whatever, like you gotta figure out how your competitor does things, and that's one
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole seamless commerce idea is something I was working for an engineering company back in I think it was like 2013, 2014, and I was talking about something very similar. It's like it's just walk in, walk out. Walk in, it understands who you are, it completely figures you out. You pick up whatever you want to buy and you walk out with it. And as you walk out of the store, it detects what you have with you and charges your account. And that's where we are. And that was like what, 15 years ago, where
Yeah.
we came up with it. And now, only now is it starting to become a thing. But then you've got all sorts of societal forces pushing back against it, right? So it's just interesting that all these things, they have their moment. And if you
Yeah.
misjudge their moment, it's almost like timing is almost everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, Amazon Go will have its day. I mean, they've shut down all the stores. Amazon Go, as of today, is no more, to the best of my knowledge, but it
Yep.
will have its day. And it will probably start in something like an airport where at 3 in the morning, it doesn't pay to have your store open with having somebody staff it because like there are not many people coming through.
Yep.
But you still have some people and all that. You could still make money from that. Like you're going to start to find these use cases where it makes more and more sense. The technology costs will come down. It will get there eventually. It's just all these things tend to take a little bit longer, like you said, than
Right. Everything takes longer than you think.
yeah, than
It's
you think.
always,
Yeah.
it's so true. So do you find that the same thing, like when I was going through my innovation time in these companies, there was always this cycle where people got real excited about innovation. They'd staff up, they get a whole innovation group, they generate a bunch of prototypes, they do some product work, they do some testing. And then after a few years or so, some executive would turn around and say, what's the ROI on this group again?
Yeah.
And then everything started like going down to zero. And then the cycle began again. Have you ever experienced that sort of cycle?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because I was blessed in some ways when I took on this job. So we had just split from eBay.
Hmm.
PayPal became its own company in 2015. And innovation was actually part of the legal function then,
Nice.
because it was
Nice.
about rebuilding a patent portfolio. Because half the
Yes.
patents went this way, half the patents went that way. And there was a lot of patent litigation going on, and I had filed a bunch of patents in my past. So it was all about that. And I remember I asked my boss, I'm like, okay, if we want to file a bunch more patents, I'm going to need a lot of money to do this. She's like, you ain't got money. So just go figure it out. And that was honestly the best thing she could have ever have said to me.
Right.
Because that entire time I was like, okay, it's about being scrappy. It's about having no resources. So the core innovation team itself in the 6 years was never more than 3 people.
Oh,
We would
perfect.
occasionally incubate. So it was built about building this culture of innovation. We would have a corporate sponsor from time to time, like I mentioned the blockchain team before, where somebody comes in and says, hey, we need to be doing something in blockchain. Here's the money, here's the goals. And so like that would be like a specific incubated like research project that would be done within innovation. So there was that was separate, but then that would also go away after a certain time. But like the core innovation team was always small. So we never had to worry about an ROI because we never had any money. There was not a there wasn't an I to worry about the R for.
Lucky. Well, that's kind of happened to me at Yahoo because I was there for 5 years, and for 2.5 years, we were doing product innovation. So people would come up with ideas, and we would try to productize them, right?
Yeah.
And nothing ever got out the door because
Yeah.
the problem is that we were able to get it to the point where it was productizable, it was interesting, we market tested it, people there was demand. But then when we tried to farm it out to the rest of the organization to turn it into a real product, it was like, oh, no, we got no time for that. We have a list of things, blah, blah, blah. We can't do that. So
Yeah.
everything just died. So then we pivoted and got pushed under the legal organization to instead of building product, let's just funnel it, make the patent the end result, right? So instead of creating real products, we created virtual products, and we decided to just generate a whole bunch of patents because at the same time we hired a VP of IP who was charged with expanding our portfolio. So the innovation got plowed right into creating patents instead, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than productizing.
Patents are so cheap. I mean,
Yeah.
folks don't know this. I mean, we made it into almost a science is doing this. I'm sure you
Yeah.
did as well. Like,
Yeah.
it is a very different process when you don't have to when you just have to explain how you can build it and you don't actually have to build it. There's a huge difference between those.
Yeah. And you can do things that you couldn't normally do, right? Like stuff that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone or in completely different areas or things that that the company can't build today, like the systems that it's got.
When we would have these patent discussions, we could say, okay, assume you have 5,000 engineers working on this project.
Yeah.
Like, what could you then do? And like, it was like, wait, well, 5,000? Like, I have 3. Like, no, but like in the world of patents, you can like really, and one of the great things I loved about that exercise, it really made you consider, well, what is actually possible?
Right.
And then you could actually take these concepts and start to apply them back to, okay, well, I guess we could do this with 5,000 people. Well, what could we do with, could we do more with just 5? And like, you
Right.
would get into these really interesting discussions.
Yeah. Or you come up with the product you can do with 5,000 people, and then you go, okay, how do we get to that point? We can't do it today, but
Yes.
what can we do now to
What's,
eventually get to that point today?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of the stuff was just so amazingly out there. And the cool stuff about it is that it actually turned into a valuable proposition for the company. In the end, they actually valued the portfolio at something like $4 billion, some insane
Wow.
number, and we contributed a huge ton of those patents into that portfolio just because of that. And the beautiful thing about it, I think one of the comments somebody made was, so we sit in an ideation session and we're doing patent ideation. And I'm trying to get people to think outside the box. These are things we can't do today, but we might be able to do tomorrow if we had the infrastructure, right? If this. And somebody said, "Oh, you're thinking about, you want us to go into the land of make believe?" And I said, "Yes, that's exactly where you need to go. I want you to go to the land of make believe and come up with ideas." Oh, okay. And then the floodgates opened.
Absolutely. And talking about the land of make believe. So we, in our innovation lab that we had in San Jose, it was just a regular conference room. But one of the things I did in the conference room was I made it look unlike every other conference room in the entire campus. Like
Yes.
so everyone had a whiteboard. So I put in a chalkboard.
Mhm.
And, they had this kind of furniture. I found a totally different kind of furniture. We built it ourselves and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to give the visual signal to people that you should be thinking differently in here.
Yes.
You are entering the land of make believe when you're here, because like all of the other constraints, all of the risk, all the compliance stuff, all the whatever, like, yeah, those are real problems. And 99% of the time when you're on this campus, you need to be worrying about this. But for 1% of the time, you just let your mind run free.
Yes.
You don't worry about any of that. You are in the land of make believe. And this is your time and opportunity to just say, well, what could be possible? And then
Exactly.
later on, we'll worry about, okay, well, then given that, well, what are the regulations on that? But like, you need to start with an open field. If you're putting constraints from the beginning, it's never going to work.
Exactly. And I think people forget. It's funny. There's so many people out there who say it's important to be in a creative environment, or the environment around you makes a huge difference. And they do nothing about it. They put you in a cubicle farm and say innovate, right? So you
Yeah.
need to change you really need to change the environment around you if you want to be creative. And it sounds like you did that. I think
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
the whole renovation for me was about $2,000. It was
Yeah.
mostly paint to cover the walls, and like they have this paint where you could write on it with chalk. Like, and then we just did that with all the walls. That cost $2,000. All the
Nice.
furniture was basically either from like my home. We found other place on campus, like salvage, all this other kind of stuff.
Wait, what was your ROI in that $2,000? Come on.
That's right. That's right.
So how did you find yourself in doing AI? I mean, when did you get into the AI stuff? Prior to Gen AI, or?
So machine learning, as like we never were allowed to utter the words AI before like 2022, I feel. So like, but machine learning,
Well, it
which
didn't
is
exist
a
prior to
subsegment of
22,
AI,
right?
kind of.
It didn't
What's
exist
that?
for a lot of people. It didn't exist prior to 22, right?
That's
It's
right.
just like
That's
all of a
right.
sudden it was just born in 22.
Yeah.
I talked to people who've been in AI for like 20 years on other shows, and
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, it's only been here for 2 years.
Yeah. But I mean, so look, it was a big part of PayPal for the entire time I was there. I started in 2011 as part of it. Like that was PayPal's whole business is predicated on being ahead of the bad guys who are
Right.
trying to, take money, say that there's someone else. Like if PayPal can't do that, then the whole business, and this is true for any banking or financial service
Yes.
business, like if you can't figure out identity, if you think a bad guy is a good guy, then like everything starts to fall apart. And the only way to do that is through machine learning and tools like that. So in those ways, we've been like always world class at that. And I would meet with teams. So we would do work in the space with a whole bunch of machine learning engineers. And the whole time I was always like, my God, this is amazing, but I can't do what they're doing. I'm not an engineer. And then
I used to be an engineer, but I
2021
can't do what they're doing either.
Yeah, I mean, I would get it intuitively,
Yeah.
but like, oh my God, the work to do this, to build these bots and all this other stuff was incredible. 2021, I finally got access to GPT-3, and I was working on just a writing project on the side. And I just like literally was putting in stuff, and I just saw it like just go off and take my story in this one direction. It wasn't really good, But
Yeah.
like I was literally watching it and I'm like, oh my God, it's like just filling in words. It's predicting the next word over and over again.
Yep.
And that was amazing to me because as a non-engineer who'd been around a lot of machine learning engineers, this was magical. And
Yes.
so it was like very clear as this continued to advance with DALL-E and other things like that, that would continue to be advanced as part of that, like this is revolutionary. So
Mm.
when it was finally time for me to leave PayPal, I was actually frustrated that nobody was spending more time talking about AI. This was in the summer
Right.
of 2022.
Hmm.
And like the very first post I wrote was the one technology that everyone should be freaking out about. This was like August 2022, because I'm like, people, like, look at this.
Just
This is
before
world
everything blew up.
changing. Then
See,
ChatGPT.
you're prescient,
Yeah,
man. You know what's
a
happening.
few months later, ChatGPT, they changed the UI and that changed everything.
Yeah.
It's just a very simple
Yeah.
thing. But look, I've just been passionate, was lucky enough to get attached to an AI center. You know, I mentor people who are in the space doing that. And I just love to play some minor part in this because it is going to be the most revolutionary technology of our
Oh,
lifetime.
absolutely. I
Without a
totally
doubt.
agree with you 100%. So speaking of that, so it's time to think like a futurist to see year 2034, 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Where do you think things are going to be in 10 years?
The one place I always go to is healthcare. I
Mm.
feel it is so broken in the US and frankly a lot of other parts of the world right now. Just how taxed doctors are. Like a doctor
Oh, it's
has
horrible.
a couple hundred patients. Like they're not going to remember. Like I only see a doctor like twice a year. Are they going to be able to remember everything that we have? This day today, I am already using ChatGPT in ways I'm not supposed to, and
Mm.
tools like that, but like putting all my medical records in there, having, and like that's the first place I turn to. And again, not medical advice for people to necessarily do this, but like for me, myself, like I find it to be really darn good.
Oh, yeah.
If you could actually integrate that into into medicine, into the doctor's office, you know, to be able to give more personalized care for the doctor. Like the doctors are not going to go away. I'm not going to
Mm.
just visit Dr. ChatGPT. I am going to want to talk to a human being who's being going to be able to pay attention to me, but to have like an AI in their ear, like that's going to be magical.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that is the kind of stuff that is going to revolutionize healthcare.
Yeah.
It's going to take
It's all about
longer.
augmentation. It's all about augmentation. It's like all of these people are just overworked. I don't know if they're underpaid, but they're all overworked. There's just too much
Yes.
data coming in, and as a tool for analysis, as a tool for research, it's beyond excellent, right? So
Yes.
if they could use that to augment themselves and just become better at things, I mean
I'm
that's the reason
not
why we build technology, right?
Exactly, Chris. I'm not the first person to say this, but like AI branded as artificial intelligence should be augmented intelligence. If it were
Yes.
branded like that, I think it would be so much more. I mean, AI in many circles is toxic, rightfully so, with how it's been branded. But if people look at it that way, God, there's so much potential there. And that is my
Yeah.
one hope is that like the medical field will be revolutionized because of this in the next 10
And the thing
years.
is, I think people forget when they look at AI, when they talk to a chatbot, they think they're talking to a machine. But the reality is that all that content that's coming out of the machine is something that other human beings have written,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what's in the
Yes.
large language model is contributions from humanity. So you're
Yeah.
talking to sort of AI AI taking contributions from humanity and putting it back together. It's a bunch of Lego blocks in a new way. So you're really
Yes.
talking to humanity when you're talking to AI. AI is doing its part, but it's you plus humanity plus AI all working together. And
The,
I
the
think people forget that.
the reason why AI knows so much about medicine is because it has read hundreds of thousands or millions of papers on all this stuff, you
The
know,
human
read
beings
in
have written.
quotes, not to anthropomorphize it more, but like it is absorbed all of this information built by people and is able to take that and synthesize that
Right.
in a way that then other people are going to say like, okay, yeah, that does make sense, or no, that doesn't make sense. You
Yeah.
know, and that is where we're going to continue to be for some time. It's, you know, OpenAI, other companies talk about like, well, at some point it'll start doing physics, some point it'll start doing science. We don't even need to get to the point where it's doing like original science before we could start taking these tools and they're almost there today. I think we're
Oh,
fairly
absolutely.
close. The hard part is going to be to implement that and to put
Yeah.
it into existing workflows. That
Yeah.
always takes time.
Yeah. So what do you think about, so Sam Altman just came out and said there's going to be super intelligence within 10 years. What do you think of that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he said a few thousand days, which I was like, what the heck is it?
Few
Like,
thousand
I always
days.
have to do the math.
So,
I'm like, what is a few
yeah, I'm like,
thousand days
okay,
mean?
I'm assuming like 3,000 days, which is about 10 years.
Yeah. Look, honestly, I don't know. If you would have told me 30 years ago, AI could have, a computer could do some of the things that just the $20 a month ChatGPT does today, I probably would have said that that was super intelligence. We keep moving the goalposts on what
Yep.
we think super intelligence potentially is.
Yep.
So will we get there? Look, I hope so. I mean, there are a lot of people with a whole lot of money moving that direction. Sam, I'm sure, knows much better than me if it is actually going to achieve that or not. But even if it doesn't, even if everything just stopped today, there is so much benefit that we could get just from being able to figure out how to use the existing models.
Yes.
The $20 a month that you pay for Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, or free with Meta or anything like that, that is like the most amazing bargain that exists today.
Oh, absolutely. I've thrown away so many other tools just to use ChatGPT because I thought to myself, okay, I need this tool, this tool, need this tool. And now I'm like, all those tools are gone because it does, it's a Swiss Army knife. It does everything I needed to do.
It does. I mean, everything from like I was doing it with the kids, driving the kids to school this morning. We were talking about like how old baseball, like the baseball league is, because my White Sox are now the worst team in history. But I'm like, well, they're not exactly, because there was a team back in the 1890s. And so we had a whole conversation with ChatGPT in the car ride to school about like, well, what is the oldest sports league in the world? And it got into like Australia.
And if you did that with
football.
Google, you'd be peppered with ads and then add this and then retarget it afterwards. But with ChatGPT, it's just like an honest conversation with another human being, right? It feels like it.
My kids could jump in with their own questions. They could specify, and it's so natural. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh yeah. Well, they definitely picked the right interface for this because that's how human beings communicate, through conversation. So that's what makes it seem so human as well.
I love the conversational bot in ChatGPT. I use it all the time. I will use it for note taking. I'll literally go for walks and I'll just start talking to him, like say, hey, I got a bunch of ideas I'm going to spit out. Like, I want to bounce back, but ultimately in the end, just give me a transcript of like what the main points were here. And like, it's the best note taker in the world.
Oh, I haven't tried that yet, but I will. Thanks for the tip.
It's great.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. It's great talking with you. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Probably on LinkedIn is the best way. I write there a lot. Just Mike Tedasco on LinkedIn. There aren't a lot of Tedascos. It is easy to find me there.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to put you in the show notes so that people can find you directly. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
it's been great. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Have a good one. Bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.